So welcome to today's webinar, Upcycling Food Waste, Trends and Predictions. Thanks again for joining us. June is National Upcycled Food Month, among other things. So we are excited to host this event with our friends at Upcycled Food Association, Where Food Comes From, and Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks. They'll be on screen shortly, but first, my name is Jeff Costantino. I'm on the communications team at ReFed. And for those of you who are not familiar with ReFed, we are a US-based nonprofit that partners with food businesses and funders, solution providers, policymakers, and more to help solve food waste. It's a problem that, as you all know, costs all of us a lot of money, has enormous negative impacts on our planet and communities. And our goal, as I'm sure yours is as well, is to increase the adoption of food waste solutions. And one way that we help do that is through events and webinars like this, which hopefully can inform the work that all of you out there are doing. So before we get into today's conversation, though, I want to share a couple of quick ReFed announcements for you. First of all, you can join us tomorrow for another webinar. This one is at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and you'll be able to hear from representatives from ReFed, WWF, Triple Win Advisory as they walk through the new employee engagement toolkit that was released recently by the U.S. Food Waste Pact and the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment. It's designed to help businesses empower their staff to take an active role in food waste reduction efforts, and it's got step-by-step guides and instructions, training videos, printable assets, and a bunch of other resources that can be used by anyone. You don't have to be a PACT member to take advantage of this. So if you haven't registered for tomorrow's webinar yet, you can do so with the link that is going to be coming up in the chat. I also want to remind everyone about the 2025 ReFed U.S. Food Waste Report. This is our annual look at what's going on in the food waste space. It's got our latest estimates on the extent and impact of food waste in the U.S. Plus, it's got explorations into what's happening in food waste funding, solutions and innovation, policy, and much more. This year was our inaugural report. We are going to be releasing it in the first part of every year moving forward. And our hope is that it really becomes a valuable resource for you in understanding not only the progress being made in the fight against food waste, but really just sort of sets the stage for where things are now and where they're heading. So you can access that report at the link that's going to be coming up in the chat. And then finally, it is almost here. Hopefully this is not the first time that you are hearing about the ReFed Food Waste Solutions Summit. I feel like we talk about it a lot because we want to make sure that you're there. It's really a great event. Hopefully you've already registered. We're going to be in Seattle June 23 through 25, and you should be there too. We have taken to describing it internally as a college reunion, and that's really the vibe of it. You'll see a bunch of people that you know. There'll be a bunch more people for you to meet. We have a packed schedule with main stage sessions and breakouts and workshops. There's tons of networking opportunities, happy hours, dinners, screenings, creative activations, and much more. It's honestly, it's just a whole lot of fun, and you are going to be exhausted at the end of the 3 days, but in a good way. So click on the link in the chat to register if you have not already done so. And with that, let's start the webinar. So there has been a flurry of interest in upcycling over the past few years, but it has been a practice that's been around for centuries. Simply put, upcycling is all about using all of what you have, doing more with less, and basically elevating all food to its highest and best use. And in the food waste context, that means creating high quality products out of what normally slips through the cracks of the food system. As I mentioned earlier, June is Upcycled Food Month, so to help celebrate, we have brought together a group of panelists to share more about the opportunities that upcycling offers and about ways that we can keep the momentum around upcycling going. This webinar is co-hosted today by 3 of the organizations who are helping to lead the upcycling charge: Upcycled Food Association, Where Food Comes From, and Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks, which you will hear is now known as Upsnack Brands. You'll hear more about what each of these organizations are doing and how they're working together to advance upcycling as a food waste solution. So let's meet our panelists. First off, we have Amanda Owenbring. She is Chief Executive Officer at the Upcycled Food Associations, which champions upcycling and advocates for the best interest of the upcycled food industry. And previously, Amanda scaled international membership at 1% for the Planet and led environmental nonprofit network expansion at Earthshare. We also have Catherine Britton, who is Executive Vice President of Customer Experience at Where Food Comes From, which is an independent third-party food verification company. So certifications like USDA Organic, Non-GMO, American Humane, and more, including Upcycled Certified, those are all part of Where Food Comes From. Catherine has spent the past 18 years helping to ensure seamless food certification compliance, and she's also a current member of the Upcycled Food Association's board of directors. And then we're also excited to have Justin Lindenmayer. Justin is Vice President Supply Chain for Upsnack Brands, which is known as Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks. You may have seen Pipcorn land a deal on Shark Tank. They were also named one of Oprah's favorite things, not once, not twice, but actually 3 times. Justin has led the launch of more than 15 Pipcorn SKUs, including the Upcycled Certified Heirloom Corn Twists that are at the heart of Pipcorn's upcycle journey. So welcome, everyone. Excited to have you as part of this discussion. And I am going to pass the mic over to Amanda to kick things off for us.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Such a pleasure to be joining this community. Happy official Upcycled Food Month. This is our kickoff of our second now celebration of upcycling all across the month of June as just a moment to really galvanize the momentum we're carrying forward all year. So excited to share a little bit more. Next slide, please. But let's start at the beginning. Really, what founded us as a membership-based trade association 5.5 years ago was aligning around shared language. So the group of stakeholders you see, including ReFed, got together with our initial members and said, let's commit to 3 pillars of what upcycled foods mean. Making sure ingredients that otherwise would not have gone to human consumption are getting put to their highest and best use, making sure they are procured and produced using verifiable supply chains, and we'll talk about certification today, and all to be driving positive impact on the environment to address this massive problem of food waste that we are all here because we care about. Next slide, please. So at that moment, 5.5 years ago, UFA was birthed. And since then, we have grown into a global heartbeat of propelling the innovation of the upcycled food space. We work with members all corners of the globe, all parts of the supply chain, from startups to multinationals, individual memberships, student membership, all leaders in the space moving this forward. And it's been a really exciting year to see just this graph on the right, how many upcycled product launches across so many sectors of grocery and beyond are really emerging. Next slide, please. Here are just some of the moments of what is coming to light in just the broader industry, as well as reaching broader consumers. It's so encouraging to see the daily interest that lands for us as an organization from all parts of the space, whether it be efforts happening in Asia, India, Australia, Europe, to how are broader parts of the industry really thinking deeply about how they can be taking current formulations, improving those through the innovation of upcycling, and the broader consumer space of our member products that are reaching into everyday homes. Next slide, please. This is an example of member collaboration that we always celebrate every year in Earth Month. Ice cream member Salt and Straw, based here in Oregon, where I am, but available nationally, gets together and highlights different upcycled ingredients within their ice cream range. So a moment that's always a joy to witness, taste, celebrate. Look forward to that up ahead. Next slide, please. And here, if you've been following the UFA journey, are just some of our moments that we wanted to bring you up to speed since we talked with ReFed this time last year. So this is our second annual Upcycled Food Month. We've marked the moment of 5 years as an organization with a webinar series this fall that's available as a resource. And we were really honored to be highlighted on the Food Planet Prize Global Long List. We'll talk a little bit later. It was also a significant moment in US federal legislation to have the No Time to Waste Act reintroduced in US Congress. That points to UFA's definition of upcycling we just saw on screen. And we've taken the time at this moment in our organization to really simplify what membership means. So if you've considered that in the past, invite you to engage. Throughout the year, we host webinars on all sorts of global topics that are available as a resource to our members and to the broader community. And then last but not least, we have a refreshed identity with a new look and feel thanks to Culver Brand Design. Next slide, please. All these are coming together into this month-long celebration of upcycling. So invite you to visit upcycledfoodmonth.org, see what else you can listen and learn across the month. Specific highlight this year is we're expanding our academic and student research community into a year-round global virtual community to be connecting and propelling upcycled food science research. Invite you to sit in on that global symposium that'll be happening next week, June 10th and 11th, across global time zones, pulling in perspectives from all different corners of where innovation is going. To other webinars with a beautiful array of friends and members of UFA. And then last but not least, we're so excited to be celebrating Upcycling Day overlapped with Refed Summit in Seattle. So look forward to seeing many of you there. Next slide, please. Across all of our work, we are so excited to see where upcycling is going and wanted to highlight this as a moment that we shared on our annual member meeting from Nielsen of really looking at the momentum and upcycled certified as a growth driver. So you'll see the energy happening in this chart, so much exciting momentum and year-over-year growth. And I'm excited to hand it over to my colleague, Catherine, to talk a little bit more specifically about Upcycled Certified. Catherine, over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it. It's certainly been active in the upcycling space over the past year and really appreciate the leadership role that UFA takes and really bringing all of these stakeholders together and making sure that we're all moving in the same direction when it comes to this upcycling effort. And one of the key factors in that is Upcycled Certified. Next slide, please. And just to level set a bit here, Amanda noted, but one of the critical outcomes of the work that UFA started and the group effort around upcycling is establishing this systematic approach to how we define and apply upcycling in the food space. And certification has become a key factor in that and is a huge part of really meeting the industry where it's at and making sure that we have not only transparency in upcycling work, but also how that can then translate into the value proposition for the many stakeholders that are involved. So Upcycled Certified today really supports and enables measurable progress in verifying waste reduction and responsible sourcing. It promotes the use of byproducts through upcycling activity and reducing dependency on new resources. And then, of course, that comes together to really move the needle when it comes to the circular economy and goals of reduction of waste and, right, hopefully eliminating waste in the long run. So we really see Upcycled Certified in this space as a driving factor in value add and transparency when it comes to the food industry's work around reducing food waste. Next slide, please. So the certification itself has certainly seen some growth over the years. Launched at the beginning of 2021, and we are now going into our 5th year of certification. And since then, there have been tremendous leaps and bounds in not only the diversification of where we see upcycling activity happening in the consumer space, but also products available to consumers. Just in 2024, we saw 42% growth in product availability. Sales growth in the retail sector has been tremendous as well. And today, the certification is boasting over 600 items available across the globe that represent the use of verified upcycled ingredients. And you can really see here too, the diversity in that space: pet products, is a primary area where we're seeing upcycled ingredients used, in addition to what you would probably think of as traditional consumer products, snack foods, fruits and vegetables, wholesale ingredients, grains, and things like that. Beverages is another key area of growth for upcycled ingredients, where we continue to see innovation in the diversification on how food can be rescued and upcycled in a way that really provides meaningful nutrition to spaces that we may not have traditionally thought about upcycling in. Next slide, please. And that really leads us to what we're really celebrating here in June, which is the launch of version 3 of the Upcycled Certified Standard. And what we've seen in this transition with the program is a focus on those key criteria for auditability, simplified language so that we can really leverage the program across diverse operations and geographies, including the reduction of limitations on eligibility when it comes to international work and production in this space, which is really increasing the scope and the opportunity of upcycled certified ingredients and products. And then enhanced rigor. A focus of the program from the beginning and its launch in 2021 has been continuing to move the needle on the food waste impact tied to certification. And so in version 3, you'll see the addition of a new category of waste metric, which is secondary waste. And that's really an attempt to not only capture and look at waste diversion at that original point of diversion from waste of that food ingredient, but make sure that we're also taking into consideration waste that might be occurring in the final production of any product using an upcycled certified ingredient. So rigor is the name of the game, and making sure that we have transparency and continued value in the standard is critical. And you can see how those come together here in the impact of the program over time. In 2025, in June, we are celebrating hitting the 5 million ton mark when it comes to food waste diverted. And that really is an indicator that this standard and the certification have meaningful impact, and the brands and supply chains that are engaging in the upcycling space are really making a difference in the work that they do. So appreciate the little spotlight on Upcycled Certified, and I will hand it over to Justin to talk about his products.
Thank you, Catherine. And I first want to thank ReefRed and UFA in general for the invitation to be a part of this, and for being such a welcoming group of passionate people to a brand like ours. It's been great getting to know all of you guys better over the years, and we're all in this journey together. So thank you. So as Jeff said, I am head of supply chain for what is now Upsnack Brands, which is the parent company for both Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks as well as Spudsy, who many of you on the call or on the webinar may also be familiar with, another potato-based snack platform. We merged basically at the end of last year, and so both brands exist under the Upsnack Brands trade name, but on shelf, both products are still sold as Spudsy and Pipcorn. I'll focus on Pipcorn because that is sort of my pedigree. Spudsy became a part of my portfolio of SKUs to manage very recently, so I'm still familiarizing myself with Spudsy, although I will say Spudsy really started as an upcycled basis for the brand, taking upcycled sweet potato flour and incorporating it into their potato-based snacks. But this presentation is really more focused on the Pipcorn side of those two brands. So Pipcorn, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the brand, we've been around for over a decade. As Jeff said, we were part of Oprah's Favorite Things a number of times, on Shark Tank. This was quite a few years back, and before my tenure. I'm going on 3 years now as head of supply chain. And we're a team of 9, so a very small but mighty team. Lucky for me, when I first started at the company back in the fall of, I I guess it was 2022, we were on the verge of launching our first upcycled product. So I can't take credit for the idea behind it, our heirloom upcycled corn twists, but my team and I kind of brought them to market, and that is what I'm going to talk mostly about here. This slide is really just more focused on our general sustainability platform, for lack of a better term, of which upcycling is a piece of it. To date, we have upcycled nearly 500,000 pounds of heirloom corn flour, which again, I will talk more about how that came to be on the next slide. But, and I'm not going to go through all these points, but between our focus on heirloom agriculture, upcycling, and the other things listed here, we feel we have a great platform to drive environmental change and healthier food to ultimately make a better food system for everybody. Next slide, please. So this is kind of how I've come to think of our relationship with upcycling. It is, I want to be clear, it is a journey. It's ever evolving, and the pieces of this continue to fall in place and shift over time as we learn more about what opportunities are out there for us to participate in the upcycled process. So it all began, as I said, with us essentially being a producer of upcycled materials. We mill a lot of corn every year, and as part of that milling process, we generate a number of outputs. One is heirloom corn grit, essentially cornmeal, which which we use for a subset of our products, our extruded cheese balls, Cheeto-like crunchies are the primary two. And for a number of years after we had launched the cheese balls and crunchies, we were basically selling the corn flour byproduct for the milling process, as well as the hominy from the milling process, to animal feed, pennies on the dollar. Well, our founders and the team that again preceded me discovered, well, this is extremely valuable material, the corn flour specifically. Why not find a way to leverage that in some innovation for future products? And that is how our heirloom corn twists came to be. We capture 100% of our heirloom corn flour from the milling process and use it as the base for our heirloom corn twists. So not only is it saving a ton of otherwise wasted costs in our supply chain, but of course it's going into delicious snacks for human consumption instead. I'll also note that we are always continuing to find new ways to minimize our production of otherwise wasted materials. The hominy is a piece that I'm still working on. Unfortunately, there aren't many homes for something like hominy besides animal feed these days, but as upcycling innovation continues, I'm hopeful that we'll find a way. So as a producer, that's kind of where it began. As a consumer, we're, like I said, consuming our own corn flour. But again, we're also trying to constantly think of other ways to utilize not only our own material, but others' material as part of our product innovation process. Spudsy, now that they are a part of our portfolio, gives us another opportunity to do so with potato. And then third and finally, I would label this sort of partner, generally speaking. We have launched a number of private label partnerships with, in fact, probably some of the members on this call, to launch SKUs focused on upcycled materials. And where we can't utilize our own upcycled byproducts, we are working on partnerships to sell or otherwise provide that material to others who can find a home for it. So I will end it there. And next up.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Thanks all of you for this setup. Glad to have you all coming back on screen here. And Amanda, thank you for reminding me about Salt and Straw ice cream, which is yet another reason to come to the summit in Seattle so you can go to a Salt and Straw shop. Reminding the attendees who have joined after we started, just to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know your connection to upcycling as well, if you do have one. And if you have questions as part of our discussion right now, you can put them in the chat and we will try to answer as many of them as we can. So let's get into it. So before we jump into the meat of the discussion, I did just want to learn a little bit more about each of you. So you kind of touched on it a little in your remarks, but would love to hear quickly how you came to the upcycling space and really what you're most excited or intrigued about when it comes to upcycling. Amanda, why don't we start with you?
Sounds great. Well, tying it all together, my journey and really the pivotal moment that led me to this space, completed my MBA in sustainability with a food systems focus, actually based out of Seattle. So that was a moment where I really kind of took my passion for food systems, having grown up in agricultural areas across the Pacific Northwest, and really saw the business opportunity to address the environmental challenges. And all those pieces of the puzzle were what I studied a decade plus ago, citing refed, watching Dana Gunders as one of my heroes in the space since all those years, and spent parts of my career really deeply in environmental philanthropy, saying, okay, climate is a huge problem, food waste as a personal solution that I'm driven by within that problem. The UFA role has really brought all those puzzle pieces together. So, really delighted to get to follow in the footsteps Refit has helped create and stand on so many of the shoulders of people that are on this call that have helped create UFA, including Catherine there from the beginning. Over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, it has been a journey in this space. And I think personally for so many of us as well. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest as well. So we have a lot of Seattle connections on this group today, and very passionate about agriculture and food systems and the people that produce our food, and had a lot of experience living in those realms where every day is the saving of something. I think our food producers are often the best at reuse and recycling and upcycling. And so I think that experience, innate experience growing up and then going through agricultural education and my master's degree in the agricultural space, it all leads towards this functionality in the food system. And I've been fortunate now to be in the food and certification realm for 18 years. Where Food Comes From has been doing food certification for 30 years. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And that's what really brought us the opportunity to be at the table when UFA launched Upcycled Certified. We were fortunate to be selected as the certification body for that program. And it really brought all of these pieces together, our expertise in certification application and understanding food systems, and really applying it to something that it's not a novel practice, but measuring it and defining it and finding it in these food systems in a uniform way is certainly not something that's been done before. So it's been a great journey here, and we can really start to see the impact on this collective work in the diversion that it's really creating in moving the food waste needle.
Yeah, appreciate that. Justin, you kind of touched on it a bit in your remarks about the work that your company's doing, but what sort of things are interesting you and exciting you about the space now?
Sure. I guess backing up how I got here, So like Amanda, I did some grad school work, not necessarily focused on food waste, but I did a joint MBA and master's in environmental management, focused on corporate sustainability. Toward the end of grad school, I really honed in on the food industry being one in which I felt I could have the greatest opportunity to make the most impact between reducing environmental impact and improving human health simultaneously. Food has always been something that I've been passionate about, healthy eating, um, and to be able to tie it into what I do day in and day out for a career was too good to pass up. And I went to Expo the spring of my last year in grad school, and I mean that was done deal in terms of wanting to work for a mission-driven food brand to help change the food system for the better. Food waste was always a, I would say, like particular passion of mine in grad school and ever since. And again, it was kind of coincidence that I walked into a company that was on the verge of launching their first set of upcycled products. So that gave me a great way to bring my personal passion to what I needed to do as part of my job at
Yeah.
Pipeline. And, on a daily basis, I have 3 kids, and any waste that they generate gets under my skin a little bit. And I have to stop myself from becoming too rigid at home about avoiding food waste. But I guess the way I think about it is a company like ours can spend gobs of money and try really hard to, reduce emissions from growing and packaging and all these things, which are very important. But if X% of what we are creating is going to waste, the ability to avoid that waste in the first place can probably dwarf any 5-10% reduction in the upstream impacts that we might be creating. So that's why, to me, until we can tackle the waste problem, the other stuff feels, frankly, a little less important by comparison.
Yeah. Yeah. I like hearing all those stories. So when we were preparing for this discussion, one of the things that we talked about was this idea that there's this tension between the idea that upcycling is new, interesting, this thing that's going on in the space that's getting a lot of attention by the media and others. Certainly, we know that upcycling has been around for a while, but if that's what people are talking about, lean into it to get the attention, where the attention is coming. But then there's that danger of upcycling being seen as a fad, which again is crazy because it's been around for many, many centuries across many different cultures. But I mean, that's how things work. Gets a lot of attention. People move on to the next shiny object. So just wanted to sort of lay the groundwork about how you all are talking about upcycling now. How are you positioning it in the discussions that you're having? And how should all of us, Refed, the other people on the call, how should we be talking about upcycling as part of the larger food waste conversation?
I love that. And it harkens me back to Justin going to Expo West, my wrap up year of my MBA program too, where I see it as a really similar journey that we're on. Back in that era of Expo West, non-GMO was just launching, what is this butterfly? And you started seeing the butterfly show up on different products and then the butterfly across different whole shelves. And that's where I really see kind of the consumer journey that the industry is pushing forward. It is that learning curve. It's what has non-GMO become in the space. It is, what was organic back, several decades ago now. So I think really leaning into what I love, Justin, you illustrate through your story is it just makes sense. So kind of the look under the hood of what are all these things we are currently investing in producing, we are investing in manufacturing, and what are kind of all those hidden yet really impactful, elegant solutions that upcycling can help bring to life. And Catherine, you've had that perspective of decades of the certification journey, so I'd love to hear your comments as well.
It is, I think, a space that's uniquely disarming in food, which sometimes is hard to find. You know, there's a lot of value sets around food that are very personal for a lot of people, and we can often see conflict amongst those value sets when we look at food. And what I think is so special about upcycling is that everyone is universally behind this model. Food waste is a universal problem. And so it makes the reality of the function of upcycling so much more purposeful for everyone and brings the entire food system together whether you're producing it or you're a consumer, you know, at home, if you're feeding your kids those snacks that you're hoping they actually finish. I think that upcycling is here to stay because it's something that universally applies to everyone. And we're seeing that in not only in the trend lines, but in all of the engagement across the industry because of the value that this brings back to each of us.
Yeah, I guess from the brand and personal perspective, to Catherine's point, it is universal. It's not something that is going to go away. I mean, no matter how hard we all try, I don't think we will ever get to 100% waste diversion across everywhere. Unlike, you know, diet fads or, you know, other health fads where this science can come in and contradict a fad and therefore maybe it goes away. You know, food waste is a fixed part of the food system. So I personally, and I guess, you know, on behalf of Pipcorn, am not concerned about it being a fad that we've invested innovation and resources into promoting as part of our brand. Where I think we sometimes struggle a bit, and I think we as a collective group of people who care deeply about this, is how do we educate consumers about what upcycled means? How do we educate producers of material that this is a no-brainer for them to invest some resources into, because ultimately it should save them costs, if nothing else, and avoid a headache of having to deal with waste. And back to the consumer side, how do we make sure consumers don't view upcycled goods as inferior or, you know, gross, for lack of a better term, because they're somehow, you know, came from waste, which can be a scary term. So it's really more on the education and exposure side for me in terms of where we need to focus, as opposed to being concerned that it's gonna go away.
Right, right. Just as an aside, do you have a sense? I mean, do you do research with consumers, or just can kind of tell from sales or something what the reaction is to upcycling? I mean, how much is that forward in how your products are promoted?
We've done a bit of consumer research when launching new form factors and SKUs about what attributes of them are, um, you know, we asked consumers to rank different attributes. Upcycled is recently has typically been a part of that criteria for them to consider. And much as I hate to say it, it hasn't been a particularly highly ranked attribute.
Mhm.
Taste, price, you know, the usual suspects are
Yeah.
still much, much higher than something like upcycled, even among our core consumers who are more familiar with something like upcycled than the average consumer out there.
Yeah.
But to me, that's still, that presents an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
If people knew more about it or cared more about it, then then the universe of upcycling can only grow.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, which speaks to the certification then, and why something like that is so important. So just wanted to shift over to you, Catherine. Big news that you shared earlier is that there is the new Upcycled Certified Standard version 3. So just wanted to dig into that a bit more. First of all, can you talk a bit about why it was necessary to have the standard in the first place, and why is it still important? Certainly, we had one of these reasons just from Justin here as we're talking, but what else?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when we see claims on food, there's so much of that is credence-based, right? Unless you're looking at something or you're able to taste it, there's very few things that we as consumers can really understand about what's being said about a product without some validation. And so what a standard provides is the universal definition for, in this case, what upcycling is, and those established benchmarks. So consumers and everyone, every actor in the supply chain can really trust the label and trust the claims being made on product. Without meaningful standards, you can have misleading or vague statements about what a product is or what it contains. And that's where you start to see consumer confusion or even eroding trust in food systems because of a disparity in what that might mean in one brand and how they talk about it versus another. So the standard provides that transparency and accountability. So the trust and confidence are inherent to the work being done. And in this case, around upcycling. And why update it now is, you know, the standard has to evolve. The food system is always evolving. There's constant changes in technologies, regulatory activities, policy, even just simple innovations or consumer expectations in what they're going into the store to buy and what it means and how it aligns with their values. So updates to the standard are necessary for it to stay current, valid, to always make sure that we're improving rigor over time. And you will see a cadence to this process. A standard practice is every 2 years to take a fresh look at a standard, engage stakeholders, make sure that there's still meaning and value. And so that's why the update in 2025 happened. And of course, what better month to publish it than Upcycling Month?
Well, going back to you, Justin, just about somebody who is part of an upcycling business, how are you leveraging the certification in your work? What sort of cred does it provide? And really, what is the response? We talked about consumers and their perception of upcycling. What are you hearing from other stakeholders in your supply chain about upcycling in general, but then also the certification itself?
I mean, the certificate, especially among trade and customers, the certification is the gold standard, right? It's definitely recognized by the folks that we're trying to sell to from a retailer standpoint, and is, I would say, with each passing year becoming more understood and valued as a differentiator. And as something that speaks to our brand and what we stand for. So obviously, being able to repurpose a third of our, milling output from a cost standpoint alone would make it the right thing to do. But the fact that there is a certification out there that allows us to share in a single logo what it is that we're doing is huge for our brand and gives us the platform to be able to tell that story about what we're doing with our corn flour.
Yeah. I am just looking at one of the comments here that somebody had put in the chat. Mara is just talking about the focus on the responsibility for individuals or individual businesses to be doing what needs to be done around zero waste systems. And she says she personally thinks that there's a lot of room for the governments and cities to take action. So I wanted to shift the discussion a little bit to that topic of building out the upcycling ecosystem. And I know, Amanda, you referenced the No Time to Waste Act, which has talked about upcycling. And I just wanted to touch on two key levers right now, policy and funding. And so just want to get a sense about what the policy landscape look like. And then also just what sort of interest from funders there has been. Has that continued to remain strong?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting both of those really essential pieces of this system, right? This is a systems level problem, so the systems level solutions are so key. So I think, going back to the federal level, No Time to Waste Act is a really key moment that we're excited to see make progress in this current Congress. It's really highlighting coordination and collaboration. So whether it is, across federal agencies working together, funding the Office of Food Loss and Waste, USDA research moving forward. And again, to come back to Justin's point, we hope for awareness campaigns to be federally supported and funded, because that is really such a key mover across everything we're talking about that I think trickles into what can state, county, cities be doing to increase both the awareness, but availability and support for these entrepreneurs and these innovators that might have a concept, but might need that, stepping stones to bring that concept to reality. So I think there's a lot of different things, and we get a lot of, outreach and try to connect folks that are working on similar things in different areas, but definitely point to the broader efforts of things like the Zero Food Waste Coalition is a great body of resources.
Mhm.
And definitely, seeing a lot of interest in, it's an economically uncertain time. So the funding space, there's a lot of our entrepreneurs, right, that are in that kind of, growth and grind, but there is, continued interest that comes to us saying, we really are curious about this space. Who should we be looking at, and what should we be kind of keeping a pulse on? That would open it up for others that have perspectives on both those.
Yeah, to add to that, I really think that what we see is certification being a vehicle for access when it comes to funding, and even on the policy side. When you have certification in place, it's a third party saying that you are doing this thing or you have achieved this function. And with that kind of proof, it can go a long way in supporting access to markets or funders. And we also see it decreasing the risk around policy or regulatory activities that are happening. So certification being the validation step to help break down barriers to funding is something that we see more and more throughout the industry, regardless really of the claim that we're talking about, depending on the mechanism that a brand or a supply chain is looking to engage in.
Yeah.
I actually have a question for, well, either of you guys, Amanda, maybe you in particular. Do you see a world in which governments mandate a certain percent of, I don't know if it's, companies' production percent must be X percent upcycled, or whether it's on the other side, producers have to divert a minimum of X percent from the waste stream. To me, that's a stick that is missing right now that could generate an overnight shift in how upcycling is thought about, versus it just being sort of a nice to have for a brand like us.
And the incremental, no, thank you for that question. And I think, it's interesting times that we live in, and I see the steps towards that change as coming from, unfortunately, beyond the US right now, right? Where it is the transparency that is being regulated. And I think with the transparency will come the change, right? So when companies have to disclose, what am I wasting? What is the impacts of those wastes? That is going to trickle into their supply chains, and our, as we know, global supply chains are interconnected right now. So much compassion for folks in, the chat right now. A lot of the funding that's getting stripped away on the US level, I think it's going to take the champions at the private industry level working with, what are the models that refed is constantly pointing us towards that are being seen as effective at smaller levels that can equal that bigger systemic change. So would I love to see that overnight, Justin? Yes, let's work towards that future. And I think, looking for the hope spots of folks in those micro economies and regional places that we can learn from and hope to replicate over time, I think has a lot of potential.
Yeah. I love that question, Justin. Appreciate that. And that sort of gets into, as you're talking about the international connections and collaboration, Amanda, gets into one of the things we were talking about in preparation for this, about just innovation. Again, that upcycling has been around for many, many years, but it is something that's being constantly innovated upon. So just wanted to get a sense, hear everyone's thoughts about key ways that the upcycling space is innovating now. And really, what does that future look like? The title of this webinar is Trends and Predictions. So what are your predictions?
I think what I get excited about is, in times of economic uncertainty, the things that we know we're already going to be purchasing and where upcycled products and ingredients are helping be a solution in that space. So I think about, the protein focus right now, members like 7 Sundays that say, let's be in the breakfast space. Let's take all those, byproducts from all the nut milks we consume and make that the protein source in our breakfast category. To the massive opportunity in food service. So many of our meals are consumed in that space. Members like the Spare Food Company that's taking surplus, excess vegetables. For the folks that might not purchase that full veggie burger, it's a blended burger. And that's showcased right now on Member Misfits Market. So kind of those things of making those choices more accessible in the everyday purchasing that we're going to be. And then kind of what is that future state of climate constrained supply chains? I think we talked a little bit about last year, the cocoa free coffee, the bean free chocolate, members like OFI taking Cascara, the coffee cherry, and turning that into a powder that then can go out in those beverage products that are really taking off right now. So just really that creativity that's taking the expected into unexpected spaces.
Building on that, this concept of how the technology is growing so much too. And this focus on scalability in the upcycling space, I think is an area where we've seen a lot of work and a lot of innovation since the launch of the certification and the shared definition of upcycling. And I think I saw Sue from Net Zero in the chat here a bit ago, but these innovators that are bringing technologies to spaces that haven't been able to find a way to capture and upcycle. And now because of these systems, because of these new developments, it's really becoming a reality for them for the first time. And it not only creates more opportunity to save food and prevent waste, but it also provides this diversification in the impact. Where can those ingredients be used? Maybe there was only enough of something for one product, but now because of the innovation in technology, we see 5 or 10 or hundreds using that kind of ingredient because it actually can get accessed now because of the work of these great innovators on the technology side. So I think that's an area where we've seen more and more growth in the past, even just 24 months on what is possible.
Yeah. Justin.
Yeah, I guess I can share that the way we're thinking about the future of upcycling, at least for our brand, is really across. It's like the slide that I put up in terms of producer, consumer, and partner, where from a producer standpoint, how do we avoid creating waste byproducts in our supply chain in the first place? Can we use the whole corn kernel to innovate new products versus just outputs of milling it, right? That is very much a part of our innovation process today. And frankly, upcycled certification has helped us think in that way. If we do have waste streams, how can we do anything possible to avoid it going to a landfill or to animal feed in our case? Are there partners we can sell it to? Are there ways we can capture it in our own product innovation process? And, are there retail partners that we can work with to co-innovate solutions for this? We have already done that with one partner who I believe is on the call. And that's an ongoing conversation. And as upcycling becomes more well-known and as the certification becomes more well-known, the ability to do that will become easier and easier because it'll be that much more of a valued criteria on
Yeah.
a package.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that and appreciate the discussion. And I want to move into our final question. And Isaac in the chat had highlighted the fact that all else being equal, having something be upcycled could be that differentiator. And so it really just speaks to the idea of all of us getting out there and educating people about what upcycling means, what upcycling can do, and really what the potential is. So I wanted to throw back to our three panelists, just get a sense for how do you keep the momentum going? How can everyone who is tuning in as well keep the momentum going when it comes to upcycling?
I can start. It's just a continuation of what I was just saying. Making sure it is always a part of our product innovation process, making sure it's always a part of our selling story, particularly for our upcycled certified products. And in my role as head of supply chain, making sure is a topic of conversation with the folks upstream in our supply chain that I work with. What materials do they have? What materials can I find a home for? I can assure you it is very much a part of all of my conversations now and will continue to be. This isn't going away.
I think for me, just as we all think about the personal action we can be taking in our everyday, taste is that invitation. I know I have my pipcorn twist showing up in my Thrive Market box on my doorstep this afternoon, and it's going to go out to T-ball snacks, right? And having that moment of conversation of experiencing what it is, inviting the question, just thinking about where we can be bringing that into all our spheres of influence. And keeping it front of mind, whether it's in our business decisions. I know we have a lot of folks in the nonprofit and governmental space here. There's so many different levels and layers to where the systems change can take place. So invite you to engage. You're not in it alone. We're doing more together than we can alone.
And I would just add to that, I think the opportunity that Upcycle brings to the table to think in a different dimension has been really meaningful in the development of something that not only can make real change in food systems, but can translate to the consumer in a way that they get to be involved in this process too. And so the way that we are all thinking differently about how we produce food is becoming part of the norm. And systems are thinking differently. Justin, you're great. I mean, just the things that you're talking about, the way you guys think about what you're growing and what you're harvesting and how you use it and how you maximize all of those pieces, even rethinking the upcycling that you're doing and innovating around that, I think is a prime example of how we're seeing that become such a part of the DNA of a food system in a new way. And we're all doing that together. And I think that's what matters most as we continue to move the needle when it comes to upcycling activity.
Yeah, that's great. and keep the momentum going by getting certified if you are a business. So that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much to our panelists. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us and actually for sharing resources in the chat. I saw a bunch of people sharing links and such, so appreciate that. We're going to be sending out an email with a recording of the webinar to everyone. If you want to get in touch with ReFed, you can use the contact information on the screen. And one thing to point out is we are on Instagram and Threads now, so make sure you follow us there if you're on those platforms. Maybe we will see you tomorrow for the Employee Engagement Toolkit webinar, and hopefully we'll see you later this month in Seattle at the summit. So have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.